What happens when a man everyone calls too calm lets a judge answer for him instead of shouting back? My girlfriend poured her cocktail over my head in front of a packed rooftop party, and her friends filmed it like a comedy sketch. She thought I would accept the joke and crawl back, but instead I walked out that night and quietly started collecting every post, clip, and comment that would later be read aloud in court. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Ivo Markel, and people say I am too calm for my own good. I work in IT support, the kind of job where you listen, observe, and fix problems quietly in the background. That is how I used to treat my relationship with my girlfriend, Jade. I watched patterns, made excuses, and told myself small red flags were just stress or her personality. She called herself a bold, honest woman who did not care what anyone thought. She called me stable, boring, and safe. I thought we balanced each other. I grew up in a small home with parents who taught me never to shout, never to raise a hand, and never to embarrass family in public. Jade grew up in a world where every emotion could be turned into content. The night she poured a cocktail over my head at a crowded rooftop party, people laughed and cheered. Some filmed it like a comedy sketch. Later, she posted the clip online with a funny caption and turned my humiliation into her brand. Everyone said I was overreacting when I walked out that same night. I did not scream. I did not fight. I simply started to remember everything. The night of the party started like any other work event Jade arranged, with her moving fast and me trying to keep up. Our apartment smelled like hairspray and perfume, music played from her phone, and clothes lay in piles on the bed. She looked at my first outfit and said it was too safe for a rooftop crowd. She called me a dad at a barbecue and told me I should try harder if I did not want to disappear in the background. I went back to the wardrobe, chose a darker shirt, and told myself it was not worth arguing. I had learned long ago that small battles with her always turned into long lectures about how she was helping me. While she finished her makeup, I sat at the small desk in the corner with my laptop open. A spreadsheet filled most of the screen, rows of tickets and dates from my job. I answered one last email, then noticed a small calendar reminder pop up in the corner. It read, Old Town Cafe, 8:15 a.m., meeting personal. I had said it weeks earlier when I first thought about talking to someone neutral about money and planning, but I had not gone. I dismissed the alert now with a tap and told myself there would be time for serious things later. Tonight was supposed to be for her work, her contacts, her fun. On the way to the venue, she scrolled through her phone in the car and checked who had already arrived. She told me 2 of her biggest clients would be there, plus Callum, the DJ she often worked with. She said I should smile more and not look like a security guard. I promised myself I would not ruin the evening, no matter what. When we stepped out of the elevator onto the rooftop, the city lights were spread out all around us. Music thumped, glasses clinked, and people moved in small, stylish clusters. Jade slipped into the crowd easily, greeting people with hugs and loud comments. She introduced me as her very calm, very patient boyfriend, the one who fixes everything in the background. People laughed and nodded, as if they already knew my role. I stayed near the bar for a while, talking with one of her coworkers about harmless topics like weather and work tools. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jade and Callum together near the DJ booth. She leaned close to him when she spoke, and he laughed and touched her arm. I told myself they were just comfortable after working together at so many events. I did not want to be the jealous man she always warned me not to become. Later, when I walked over to join their group, Jade was telling a story about a client who had annoyed her. She said she had put him in his place with a public joke, and everyone around her praised her for being brave and honest. She turned to me and said her life was too short for weak energy. I could feel some eyes move from her face to mine, waiting for my reaction. I only smiled faintly and said she had always been good at getting attention. As the night went on, I spoke briefly with an old colleague who had been invited by another guest. When she asked how I was, I said nothing deep, just that work was steady and life was busy. I saw Jade watching us from across the bar. Her eyebrows lifted in that way I recognized, the way that meant she felt challenged even if nothing serious had happened. When I returned to her group, she made a remark about how quickly I made friends when I wanted to. Her tone carried a warning. I replied calmly that I had only spoken about work. She said she did not like being embarrassed in front of important people and that I should remember whose event this was. Some people around us laughed awkwardly and looked away. Then, without any build-up that others could see, she decided to turn the moment into a show. She lifted her cocktail glass and called for attention, saying she wanted to demonstrate how she handled men who forget their place. I felt the air shift. People turned, phones came up almost automatically. Callum was already holding his in a position to film. For a second, I thought she would just make a loud joke and stop there. Instead, she stepped closer, smiled wide, and tipped the entire drink over my head. Cold liquid ran down my hair, my face, my shirt. The music kept playing behind the noise of shouting and laughter. Someone near the bar yelled that this was the clip of the night. I stood still and blinked away the sting in my eyes. Jade threw her head back and laughed as if she had done something clever. She told everyone that I had been testing her and that she did not tolerate disrespect. She said this in a dramatic voice, like a performer on a stage. I heard one woman say she loved seeing a man checked like that. Another person shouted that I deserved it if I had been flirting. None of them knew what had actually happened, and none of them cared. In that moment, I understood that nothing I said would matter in that room. If I shouted, grabbed the glass, or even raised my voice, I would prove every twisted story she could later tell about me, so I did not shout. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, put the empty glass on the bar, and told Jade, in a low and steady voice, that I was going home. She rolled her eyes and announced to the group that I was being dramatic, that I could not handle a joke, and that this was why she called me boring. People laughed again. I turned and walked away. On the smoking patio, a few guests watched me pass with mixed looks, half amused and half sorry. I did not stop to explain myself to anyone. I took the elevator down alone, feeling the sticky drink drying on my scalp. On the ride home, the city lights looked distant and cold through the car window. Back in the apartment, I went straight to the bathroom, showered, and changed into clean clothes. When I came out, the living room was empty. Jade was still at the party, turning my humiliation into more material. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into social media. It did not take long to find the first clip. Jade had already posted a short video of the moment, cut to make it look playful and brave. The caption hinted that I had crossed a line and that she had taught me respect. I watched my own soaked face freeze on the screen. I dragged the clip into a new folder on my desktop and named it with the date. I did not know exactly why, only that deleting it would not erase what had happened. As I sat there, my phone lit up next to the keyboard. A preview from an unknown number appeared, saying the sender was at the party and wanted to talk about what Jade had done. At the same time, I heard the stairwell door in the building close softly behind me as I stepped out for air, the sound of it echoing in my memory like the end of something I had not yet named. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had not slept at all. My pillow still smelled faintly of the drink from the night before, even though I had changed the covers. Jade came home very late and slipped into bed without saying much. She moved as if nothing serious had happened. When my alarm went off, she was still scrolling through her phone. I saw the light from her screen on the wall. She told me, in a casual tone, that the party had been a huge success and that people loved the clip of me getting put in my place. She said I should be happy because engagement was high. I said nothing. I dressed in silence and went to the small desk in the living room to check my emails before work. My laptop woke up with a faint hum. The folder with last night's saved clip sat on the desktop, its name just the date. For a few seconds, I hovered the cursor over it and felt the urge to drag it into the trash. But deleting it would not delete the memory or the people who had already seen it. Instead, I created another folder and named it Household, even though it had nothing to do with bills or chores. I moved the clip inside and closed the laptop. On the way to the office, the city felt sharp and bright. My reflection in the train window looked normal, but I knew some people had already seen a different version of me on their screens. I tried to tell myself that it was only one clip and that people would forget quickly. Deep inside, I did not believe that. When I walked onto the open-plan office floor, I felt eyes turn toward me and then slide away. A small group near the kitchenette huddled around a phone. They went quiet as I approached, then one of them forced a cheerful greeting. I answered politely and kept walking, pretending not to hear a soft comment about my new hairstyle. At my desk, I set my bag down and opened my computer, focusing on routine tasks. A few minutes later, a company chat notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Someone had shared an image. I clicked it before I could stop myself. It was a still from the clip, showing me with drink dripping off my face, eyes half closed, mouth tensed. A text overlay read something about when your girl has had enough. There were laughing reactions already lined up under it. My throat felt tight. I closed the window without typing a single word. I sat very still, fingers resting on the keyboard until my pulse slowed down. Tara from my team walked past my desk and paused. She had seen the chat pop up too. She gave me a small, careful smile and asked in a low voice if everything was all right at home. I said I was fine, that things were just noisy online. She nodded, but her eyes stayed worried. After a while, I opened the chat again, this time with a different aim. I took screenshots of the image, the comments, and the list of people who had reacted. I saved them to my computer and quietly moved them into the household folder. I did not rename any files or write any notes yet. I just collected what was already there. Late in the morning, an email from my manager appeared in my inbox. He asked if I could stop by his small office for a quick talk. The subject line was neutral, something about checking in. I knew what it really meant. When I stepped inside, he closed the glass door and spoke in a calm, careful way, as if he were handling something delicate. He said there was a video going around that some staff had seen. He said it showed me in a personal moment that looked intense, and that he was concerned about how this might affect the work environment. He did not mention Jade by name. He did not say anything about her pouring the drink or the laughing crowd. Instead, he focused on the idea that any episodes connected to staff could raise questions about emotional stability. I did not get angry. I did not defend myself with long explanations. I told him simply that I had not started the incident, that I had not reacted with violence or shouting, and that my work performance was unchanged. I said I understood his concern and that I was handling the situation in my personal life. He looked relieved to hear a calm voice and said he hoped it would all settle down soon. When I left his office, I felt strangely empty, as if someone had taken the story and folded it again, this time in a way that still placed some weight on me. At lunch, I stayed at my desk while others went out. I opened a browser and typed in simple searches about saving large files, storage options, and securing backups. I clicked through a few pages about cloud services and external drives. Then I closed the tabs when I heard footsteps behind me. I did not want anyone to see what I was looking at and start guessing. My phone buzzed on the desk. A call came in from a number saved under a simple scales emoji without a name. I had added that contact weeks earlier after looking up a professional who handled personal advice about rights and records. I watched the call ring in silence, then let it go to a missed call. I did not feel ready to speak yet. Later, during a short break, Tara came over again. She said some people in another department thought the video was funny, but others felt uncomfortable. She admitted that seeing it made her feel sick because it looked like I had been turned into a joke without my consent. I thanked her for telling me and said I appreciated her honesty. I also asked her gently not to join any arguments on my behalf. I told her I did not want more noise around the clip. She nodded, though I could see she did not like staying quiet. When the workday finally ended, I walked down into the underground parking garage and sat in my car for a long minute before starting the engine. The air down there was cool and still, filled with the faint smell of concrete and oil. It felt like a separate world, away from screens and notifications. I took out my phone, opened the company chat, and saved another set of screenshots, this time including new comments that had appeared during the day. I then checked my messages. In the thread labeled follow-up, there was a short text from the Scales emoji contact, asking if I needed help organizing anything and reminding me that it was better to act sooner rather than later. I read it twice, felt my heartbeat steady, and then locked the screen. On the drive home, I left the radio off and listened only to the sound of the car. The image of my soaked face, frozen on so many screens, kept appearing in my mind. I did not plan any grand speech or dramatic confrontation. Instead, I repeated a simple thought. I could not control what people joked about today, but I could decide how the story would look when someone serious read it later. When I parked and checked my phone again, I saw 2 new alerts. One was from the company group chat, showing another message about the video. The other was from my manager, asking if we could have a quick word tomorrow about ongoing content and workplace reputation. Both notifications blinked at me, side by side, as the light in the parking garage flickered. A few days after the party, Jade behaved as if nothing truly serious had happened, only a small dramatic moment that made her look exciting. At home, she talked mainly about engagement numbers, brand mentions, and how many new followers she had gained. She moved around the apartment with the loose confidence of someone who believed the world had already taken her side. I kept going to work, answering tickets, restarting systems, and pretending my life was still ordinary. Inside, I knew something had shifted. The cocktail moment had not ended when I left the rooftop. It was still unfolding in rooms I could not see. One evening, Jade invited me to another event at a different rooftop bar where some of the same people would be. She said it would be good for me to show my face so nobody thought I was hiding. She added that strong couples know how to handle a little drama. I agreed, not because I wanted to be there, but because I needed to see how she was telling the story when I was not around. When we arrived, the bar was already crowded. Music pulsed through the floor, and a thin layer of smoke from the nearby patio hung over the tables. Jade moved through the crowd like she owned it. People greeted her with smiles and inside jokes I was not part of. I stayed close at first, listening more than I spoke. At one point, a group formed near the smoking patio where the noise was slightly lower. Jade stood in the middle with a drink in her hand, and I watched as the conversation turned toward dealing with men who cross lines. Someone asked her how she stayed so strong in relationships. She smiled and said she had learned not to let anyone talk down to her or make her look small. Then she brought up the rooftop incident with the cocktail. Only this time, her version changed. She described me as someone who had grabbed her arm hard and spoken to her in a way that embarrassed her in front of a client. She said she decided, in that moment, to show everyone she would not tolerate disrespect. According to her story, the drink had been a natural answer to aggression. People around her nodded as if they found this admirable. Some faces looked shocked, but they did not ask questions. Callum stood nearby with his phone half raised, pretending not to film but clearly capturing parts of her speech. I listened to every word. I remembered the actual moment, the quiet argument, the wet glass, the cold liquid, my steady voice. There had been no grabbing, no raised hand, no public threat. Yet here, in this group, that did not matter. The story she told now was more dramatic, so it stuck better. I did not interrupt her. If I jumped in and corrected every sentence, it would turn into a scene, and she would turn that scene into more content later. Instead, I focused on the details. Which phrases she used, who laughed, who looked uncomfortable, and who filmed. I stood close enough to hear, far enough that people could pretend I was not part of the circle. After a while, I stepped away and went back inside, pretending I needed some water. My head felt heavy, but my mind felt strangely clear. I understood now that the story was not just an embarrassing moment at a party. It had become part of her image. She was building a brand around being hard, honest, and unshakable, and I was one of the props. Later that week, Jade met friends at another rooftop spot, this time more casual. She asked if I wanted to come. I said yes, again for the same reason. I wanted to hear, see, and remember. At the table, surrounded by people who lived online as much as in real life, the conversation moved quickly to relationships and toxic men. Jade made long, animated gestures as she talked about being with a man who wanted everything quiet and controlled. She hinted that I had tried to limit her work, her social life, her contacts, and that I had a problem with strong women. None of that matched our real arguments, which had mostly been about basic respect, but her audience did not know that. Callum showed up halfway through and dropped into a chair like he belonged to her side of the table. When someone asked Jade if she was still with me, she said in a half-serious tone that she was testing things and might need a new energy if I did not adapt. Callum joked that auditions were always open. People laughed again. I sat quietly, drank water, and watched. My cheeks felt hot, but my voice stayed level. I did not argue or defend myself. In their eyes, I was already the man with a drink poured over his head, the one who had to prove he was not as bad as the story made him. Anything I said would be filtered through that image. When we finally left and walked home, Jade talked about future events and possible brand deals. She did not once ask how I felt about her new version of the story. The next day, my sister Mila asked to meet at a small park near our parents' place. We sat on a bench while children ran around the playground. She looked tense before she even spoke. She told me that a friend had sent her one of Jade's posts, a longer story where Jade described me as controlling, jealous, and almost aggressive. The final slide was the cocktail clip, cut to make it look like a victory moment. Mila asked quietly if Jade was telling the truth. I explained, step by step, what had actually happened at the rooftop, how Jade had poured the drink after a simple disagreement about a short conversation with an old colleague, how I had left without shouting, how she had turned it into a symbol. I told Mila about the new version, where I supposedly grabbed Jade and humiliated her first. Mila's hands tightened into fists on her knees. She said it made her sick to see my face used like that, and even worse to read comments from strangers cheering. I listened and then said something I had not fully said aloud before. I told her that I was not fighting back online on purpose. I said it was not because I agreed, but because I wanted the pattern to stay clear. Every clip, caption, and comment was a piece of something bigger. I told her I had started saving the posts, the office chat memes, the reactions, and the dates. Mila fell silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. She said she understood, even if it hurt to watch people think they could say anything about me. While we sat there, I took out my phone and looked at my gallery. A small CloudSync pop-up appeared at the top of the screen, saying file uploaded successfully. It was one of the clips I had saved the night before, now stored in a place further away from accidental loss. I felt a strange mix of heaviness and control. I could not erase the laughter from those nights, but I could decide that it would not be the last word. As we stood up to leave the park, another notification flashed across my screen. Jade had tagged me in a new story. The title read something like How to Handle a Man Who Crosses the Line, with a thumbnail of my face soaked in cocktail. I visited my parents the next weekend because my mother had called twice and then stopped calling. That was unusual for her. She normally sent messages about small things like sales at the supermarket or a neighbor's new dog. Now there was silence. I took the train to their neighborhood and walked the familiar streets, past the old playground and the small bakery. Their building looked the same, but I felt heavier as I climbed the stairs. In the kitchen, the air smelled of soup and detergent. My mother had set out 3 mugs and a plate of biscuits as if she had been waiting by the clock. My father sat at the table with his hands around his cup, staring at a spot on the wall. My mother moved too quickly, wiping a clean counter for no reason. I realized immediately that they had seen more than just a still image or a passing joke. My mother said that someone from church had shown her a video on a phone, saying they recognized her son. She explained in a shaky way that the clip showed Jade pouring a drink over my head while people cheered. She added that the woman had asked what terrible thing I had done to deserve it. My father said he had then asked a younger neighbor to help him find the same video online. He had watched it in their living room, alone, replaying it once, then turning off the device. He did not describe how he felt. He did not have to. I could see it in the way his shoulders sagged. They wanted to know if I had done something cruel, because otherwise they could not understand why a woman who said she loved me would do that in front of everyone. I told them, in calm, plain words, the same version I had told Mila. I said there had been no grabbing, no shouting, no insult from me. I said that Jade had turned a small disagreement into a performance. My mother covered her face with her hands for a moment. She said she felt ashamed that people had seen me like that. She worried they would think she had raised a bad man. My father said quietly that people could say what they wanted about him, but he did not like seeing his son treated that way. Then he added that he understood if I wanted to keep some distance from them for a while, so Jade would not feel judged or cornered. Hearing that broke something inside me. They were ready to give me up just to keep me safe from her world. I told them I did not want them to disappear. I said the problem did not start with them. Still, I could see in their eyes that they were already pulling back in their minds, trying to reduce the damage. Later, my mother said she needed bread and a few small things, so we walked to the nearby supermarket. The fluorescent lights and neat aisles felt almost harmless after the messy feelings in the kitchen. We picked up simple items: bread, milk, tea. In the checkout line, a woman ahead of us kept glancing back. After a moment, she smiled and said she recognized me from a video. She said it was wild how my girlfriend had handled me and that people were calling it a perfect example of not tolerating bad behavior. She laughed as she spoke, as if we were sharing a joke. My mother stood very still, holding the basket. My father thanked the woman in a flat voice and said nothing else. When we left the store, my mother's steps were slower than usual. On the walk back, she suggested that maybe she and my father should not come to any events with Jade anymore. She said she did not want to give people more reasons to talk. She repeated that she loved me, but she did not want to be part of my humiliation. I did not argue with her feelings. I just promised that I would visit them often and that I was not as powerless as I looked. A few days later, Jade insisted that we attend a family barbecue at her parents' house. She said it would be good for everyone to see that we were fine. She also hinted that some relatives wanted to meet the man from the video. As we entered the river's backyard, I felt the weight of many eyes on me. There were folding chairs, a grill, and long tables full of food. Nora bustled around, greeting guests. When she saw us, she hugged Jade in front of everyone and said loudly that her daughter was strong and did not let any man step on her. Some people clapped. I sat near the edge of the group, close enough to hear, far enough that people could pretend I was not listening. At one point, Nora took center space near the grill and asked Jade to tell the story again, for those who had not seen the video. Jade smiled and began retelling it in her new version. She said that I had tried to control her in front of clients and that she had finally shown the world she would not accept it. People laughed and shook their heads in admiration. Phones came out. Someone replayed the clip on speaker, the sound of liquid, laughter, and Jade's voice filling the yard. I felt like the ground beneath the chairs had turned thin and fragile. Near the end of the afternoon, Liam came over to me with a half-eaten piece of bread in his hand. He is only a child. His questions are simple and direct. He said he had seen the video on his cousin's phone. He asked if I had been so bad that Jade had to throw a drink at me. He asked if all men should expect that when they act wrong. Some adults nearby laughed nervously, saying that children tell the truth. Others looked away. I felt a deep, cold anger in my chest. Not the kind that makes a person shout, but the kind that makes everything very clear. I told Liam in a steady voice that no one deserves to be hurt or humiliated for a joke. I said grown-ups sometimes do wrong things that look fun, but they are still wrong. He listened in that serious way children do when they realize adults are not playing. When we finally left the barbecue and walked out to the street, Jade said I had made things awkward by answering him in such a heavy tone. She said I should have laughed and moved on. She added that people were on her side anyway, so my mood did not matter. At home that night, the apartment felt smaller than usual. I went to the little corner with the wall planner. A date a few weeks away was already circled in red, a mark I had made after my first quiet searches. I took a small sticky note and wrote "Bring forms" in neat letters, then placed it just under the circle. Jade did not notice. She was in the other room, talking loudly on the phone and feeding old mail into the shredder. The low, steady hum filled the hallway like a machine eating evidence. As I stood there, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a message from my mother, saying that if staying with Jade meant people believed I was the kind of man who deserved public punishment, maybe they should step back completely. She said they would always love me, but they refused to be part of a story that turned violence into entertainment. The shredder's sound grew louder while I read her words, and I understood that the next steps could not be gentle anymore, even if my voice stayed calm. After my mother's message and the steady hum of the shredder in the hall, I sat down at the kitchen table and let the silence between sounds sink into me. Jade walked past the door a few times, still talking loudly to someone on the phone about cutting out negative people and not letting anyone drag her brand down. She did not mention my parents by name, but I knew who the negative people were. When she finally ended the call, she came into the kitchen and opened the fridge as if nothing important had happened. She asked if I was done being dramatic and if I was ready to move on. I told her, in a level voice, that this was not about drama for me. I said that my parents were now talking about disappearing from my life so they would not feed her stories. Jade shrugged and said that if they felt guilty, maybe they had reasons. She added that people online were on her side and that I should accept I looked bad in this situation. Her words did not raise my pulse anymore. They simply confirmed what I had already seen in her actions. That night, when she went to brush her teeth, I took a pillow and a blanket and walked to the guest room. I did not make a speech or slam any doors. I just laid the pillow on the bed, spread the blanket, and sat down. When Jade noticed, she stood in the doorway and asked if I was really doing the separate bed thing, like we were in an old movie. I answered that I needed space to think, and that I did not want to pretend we were fine. She called it a punishment, said I was trying to control her with silence, and warned me that she would not chase after me. I told her I was not asking her to. Then I closed the guest room door softly. In the dim light, I could see that the bedspread was slightly wrinkled in a way that did not come from storage. It looked like someone had sat or lain there recently, probably on nights when I was on late shifts. I tucked that detail away without comment, another small piece in the pattern. Early the next morning, I got up before the alarm. The apartment was quiet. I made coffee, then went to my desk in the living room and opened my laptop. The folder named Household sat on the desktop. I clicked it open and saw the saved clips, screenshots, and images inside. The list was longer now. The original cocktail video, office chat memes, Jade's stories with new captions, and the compilation clip with my soaked face as the cover. I created 2 new folders and named them Archive A and Archive B. Into one, I moved everything related to the rooftop and her different versions of the story. Into the other, I placed the office screenshots, the barbecue, and anything that involved family or children. I added simple text files with dates and short lines describing where each item came from. Then I opened a drawer and took out a small USB stick. I wrote the current date on a piece of tape and stuck it to the side. I copied both archives onto the stick and watched the progress bar move slowly. When it finished, I ejected it, crossed the room, and slid it under a dull folder labeled Taxes in another drawer. I closed the drawer and turned the key until I felt the lock click. The sound was quiet but solid, like something taking shape. At work, I moved through tasks like a person underwater, but my focus was sharp. During a break, I checked my personal email on my phone. There was another message from the contact saved with the scales emoji asking if I wanted to meet to talk in detail. The email used simple words about organizing records and understanding options. I replied with a short message agreeing to a meeting and chose a date that matched the red circle on my wall planner. I typed the place and time into my phone calendar as Office Tower Lobby 11 a.m., meeting personal. The words looked strange and heavy on the small screen, but they also looked right. Later that week, I booked a small room in a co-working center under a neutral name. When the day came, I left the office during a long lunch, telling my manager I had a personal appointment. The shared building lobby was quiet and smelled faintly of coffee and cleaning spray. In the rented room, there was just a table, 2 chairs, and a whiteboard. I sat down, placed my notes on the table, and opened my laptop. When the person I had contacted joined me, I did not start with big statements about pain or betrayal. I started with dates. I described the rooftop party, the cocktail, the video, and I named each time Jade had changed the story. I spoke about the office meme, the HR talk, the barbecue, Liam's question, and the stranger in the supermarket line. I mentioned the way my parents now wanted to disappear from my life to protect me. I used simple sentences, each one tied to something I could show. A saved clip, a screenshot, a message, a name. The person listened, asked clear, short questions, and wrote things down. They did not react with shock or gossip. They focused on structure. They explained in the same calm tone that I was right to save everything and that there were formal ways to answer this pattern. They mentioned general steps, nothing detailed, nothing labeled yet. I nodded, took my own notes, and felt the scattered events in my head line up into a straight path. When I left the co-working room, I did not feel victorious or broken. I felt like someone at the beginning of a long, serious process. That evening, back at the apartment, the distance between Jade and me had become part of the furniture. We moved around each other in the kitchen like two strangers in a shared hostel. 2 mugs sat on opposite sides of the counter. She made a call on speaker, telling a friend that I was obsessing over the past, and that she might need to move on to protect her future. She suggested that I had anger problems, that I could snap at any time. I listened from the hallway, breathing slowly. I did not interrupt. I simply added her words to the list in my mind. When she finished the call, I stepped into the kitchen. I told her calmly that my parents would not attend any more events where she was present or be mentioned in her content. I said I would not defend her to them or to anyone else. She laughed sharply and said I was throwing away the best thing that had happened to me. She reminded me that she had more followers, more friends, more connections. She said people believed her version anyway. I looked at her and for the first time did not feel the need to explain myself. I said only that we would not be arguing about this for long. She asked what that meant. I replied that she would find out soon enough and that I would handle everything properly. I used that word on purpose. She rolled her eyes and said she was tired of my cryptic mood. Later, I went back to the guest room. I opened the thin binder labeled Utilities and slipped inside copies of shared bills, the lease, and any documents that showed my contributions. Then I closed it and placed it in the locked drawer with the USB. My phone buzzed with a reminder labeled Paper Drop 3:35 p.m., referring to a small errand I had scheduled to move some items into safe storage. I dismissed it and scrolled to the date with the red circle. Under it, the calendar entry for Office Tower Lobby 11 a.m. Meeting personal waited calmly. The next morning, I dressed for work, then put on a different jacket, one with an inside pocket large enough for a folder. Jade sat on the couch with her phone, watching videos, barely looking at me. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of the kitchen. I told her, in a steady voice, that I was done explaining myself to her or to her audience. I said that from now on, any answer to what she had done would come from a place where likes, jokes, and edited clips did not matter. I repeated that I would handle it properly and that she should be ready for that. She frowned and asked if I was threatening her. I shook my head and said I was simply informing her. Then I stepped into the hall and pulled the door closed behind me. The latch clicked firmly at the same moment my phone vibrated in my pocket, showing the reminder for Office Tower Lobby 11 a.m., meeting personal. The Office Tower lobby was busier than usual when I arrived, full of people in suits, coffee in one hand and phones in the other. I checked in at the reception desk for my meeting, personal, and was directed to a quiet seating area near a row of elevators. I sat down with a thin folder in my jacket pocket and my phone in my hand. My heart beat faster than normal, but my mind felt clear. A few minutes later, I saw Jade through the glass doors. She walked in with Nora beside her, both dressed for what they thought would be a networking appointment. Jade looked confident, phone in hand, already recording short clips of the lobby to post later. They spoke about impressing a potential client, about showing that she could handle public storms. They did not know who had asked them to come. As they reached the center of the lobby, a man in a plain suit stepped forward and asked Jade to confirm her name. She did, expecting some kind of welcome. Instead, he handed her an envelope and said he had been instructed to deliver it personally. Nora frowned. Jade opened the envelope right there, expecting a contract or brief. The first page showed a still image from the cocktail video, her arm raised, drink in midair, my face already wet. Below it, there was text describing a pattern of repeated public humiliation, false claims about aggression, and online posts that invited others to mock me. I watched from my seat as she flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. She saw screen captures of her captions, comments from strangers calling me violent, and notes about the impact at my workplace and in my family. A staff member approached us and guided everyone to a small hearing room down a side corridor. Inside, the air was cool and still. The judge looked at each of us in turn, and then at the folder of evidence already prepared. Jade tried to explain that everything had been jokes, that people understood she was just being dramatic. Nora said she was expressing herself, and that any man who felt attacked probably had something to hide. I spoke only when asked, in short, simple sentences. I said I had not grabbed her, had not shouted, had not struck her. I said that my parents had been questioned about what I had done to deserve public punishment, that a child had asked if all men should expect drinks thrown in their faces, and that coworkers now saw me as a punchline. The judge read from the posts and watched the videos without expression. Then, in a steady voice, they called Jade's behavior defamatory and harassing, not honest or empowering. They issued orders. She was required to remove all related clips and posts, publish a clear correction stating that her claims about me being violent were untrue, and pay a financial penalty connected to the damage caused. The judge warned her that any new content repeating the same pattern could bring further consequences. When the clerk's stamp came down on the papers, it made a sharp, final sound against the desk. The brief session ended soon after. In the lobby again, Jade stood with the envelope in her hands, staring at the pages as if they might change if she looked long enough. Nora spoke quickly in her ear, but her voice sounded thinner now. I did not walk over to them. I did not ask if they understood. I simply nodded to the staff member who had guided us, stepped through the glass doors, and felt the cool air outside. My phone buzzed in my pocket with a message from Mila asking how it had gone. I did not type a long answer. The sound of the stamp in my mind already said enough.